of things that the kids need.
Any tips, since you designed the maze, any tips for getting through fast? Is there a prize for the fastest person through, or out of the 13, everyone's a winner, right, Martin?
Yeah. As long as you get out, you're a winner.
You just want to go. I think if you get out alive, it says, you're winning. You know?
That's the one. Any tips? No, I wouldn't want to give away too much. Yeah, I like people getting lost in them. And, there's lots of dead ends and things.
So you don't
pun intended, of course.
Not dead. It's right.
You don't drop breadcrumbs on the ground or, take little bits of red tape and, do you have people trying to work out how to work it out?
I'm not sure, but good luck to them because it's sort of just a random line on a plan that I'm doing. So I don't think there's too much science behind it.
You wouldn't be gluten free on this, would you?
No, that's it. And just wear gloves, obviously, if you are.
Yes.
Paul Jackson.
I'm sure it's a great time, but my word.
Yeah, and meanwhile, just a final question: who does the scaring?
Just parents from the school, waiting kids
Headmaster.
Get dressed up. Yeah. And, anyone who walks in there, they'll get a fright or two, I'm sure.
A fright or two.
Anybody in this cornfield that rips up a chainsaw behind me, I'm probably going to, I'll probably punch them first and then run. I'm not quite sure.
That's it. Can you just run through the maze? Like you don't have to follow the path.
Right. Yeah, you can try, but you'll probably run around in circles. The idea is to find a few things that are in the paddock, and if you can find all three, then you're doing pretty well.
Oh, good on you. Look, all the best for the fundraiser this weekend.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Done.
No, appreciate it.
Paul Jackson there, and that's Timaru's Barton Rural School with their, now what are they calling it? An amazing maze and maze. I know, right?
Amazing Maze fundraiser.
Well, that's been fun. That pretty much brings us to the end of our panel. We've got a text here. Quinoa salad can make in advance. Chuck anything in there you have lying around and you can pretend you're super healthy. That's from Linda in Paikakariki. Thank you, Linda. Nice touch.
Well, a little bit of quinoa goes a very long way. Long way.
You're not a fan of quinoa, Martin?
Oh, what are they called? Ancient grains. I think that's what they call it. Amaranth, quinoa, ancient grains. Sounds great, but yeah. All right, they're tasty, but nutty.
Tasty, nutty, great company, both of you. Cindy and Martin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Checkpoint is
See you,
next. Ka kite anō.
Kei te whakaronga mai koe ki te reo irarangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Jimmy Ellingham. E haere ake nei, commuter outrage in Auckland as heat closes train lines. Countdown's rat woes continue. Exterminators catch almost 20 rats at its South Dunedin store over the weekend, while a customer spots a mouse in a Christchurch deli. The government officially scraps three waters. Taylor Swift's team wins the Superbowl in overtime. The SPCA urges the coalition government to rethink its election promise to reverse live animal exports, and Canadian rapper and hip-hop artist Drake gives a young fan who survived cancer an evening to remember. You can watch us live on the RNZ website, Facebook or Freeview Channel 50.
RNZ News at 5 o'clock. Tēnā tātou. I'm Evie Ashton. An Auckland councillor is railing against more disruption to the city's train services during rush hour. Some services have been cancelled because of speed restrictions imposed because the tracks are too hot. Kiwi Rail says the track around Otahuhu has reached 48 degrees. Met Services website shows the city's temperature is currently 24, and Kiwi Rail says tracks are typically 20 degrees warmer than the air temperature. Councillor Richard Hills says it's the latest in a string of cancellations.
My concern is this comes on the back of several weeks of cancellations, delays, slowing the tracks. We've had operational issues, signal faults, crew issues, almost daily.
Auckland Transport says commuters can expect some cancellations between now and 8 tonight. Legislation to repeal Three Waters will be passed by the end of next week. The government then intends to pass 2 separate pieces of legislation over the next 18 months to establish its Local Water Done Well plan. The plan gives local bodies the option to set up council-controlled organisations together, and Local Government Minister Simeon Brown says it will be a voluntary process.
Ultimately, councils will be responsible for putting forward their plans to have long-term funding and financing and arrangements for that as part of how they want to do it. They own it, they control that process. We're not going to be mandating these mega entities, co-governed mega entities onto councils.
A technical advisory group is being set up to advise on the implementation of the long-term water plan. More than 20 rats have been caught at a South Dunedin supermarket since last week. Food Safety's Vincent Arbuckle says pest controllers have done a lot of work finding and sealing entry points into the Countdown store, which is currently closed.
We know that they caught over the weekend 13 rats on site of various ages, and overnight a further 4 were caught. So, their actions are, hunting down the problem.
A mouse has also been seen on video running across uncovered salad in a Christchurch Countdown. But some shoppers there today said that was news to them. Vicky, who had just completed a shop at the Eastgate store, said she was unaware of the rodent sighting.
Oh, the supermarket! I didn't know it was the supermarket that it was found at. Oh my gosh. They're so cute though, but they don't belong there, do they? I'd be really interested on the follow-up. Like, what did they do about it going forward? What are they going to do?
Vicky says she'll keep shopping there if Countdown can prove it has dealt with the problem. Jason Stockel, who's the director of stores for Countdown's owner Woolworths, says a dead mouse was found the day after the sighting last Wednesday, and there have been no other sightings. The Israeli military says it's rescued 2 hostages during a raid by members of its special forces in Rafah. It says the 2 men, aged 70 and 60, were taken to Sheba Hospital in central Israel, where doctors say they're in good condition. They were among about 250 people kidnapped by Hamas 4 months ago. And a self-driving car in San Francisco has been attacked by a crowd and set on fire. Waymo, which is owned by Google's parent company Alphabet, says someone in the crowd broke a window and threw a firework inside the car. Video footage shows the electric vehicle burning, sending up a huge plume of black smoke. Waymo says no one was inside and no injuries have been reported. This isn't the first time people have attacked a self-driving car, but the severity of the incident may illustrate growing public hostility towards self-driving cars following a pedestrian dragging accident last year. To sport now, and in the US, the Kansas City Chiefs have won the NFL Superbowl, beating the San Francisco 49ers 25-22 in overtime. It's their 2nd consecutive Super Bowl title and their 3rd in the past 5 years. They're the NFL's first repeat champions since the New England Patriots in 2005. Erica Fairweather's gold medal at the World Swimming Champs in Doha is another step up in the burgeoning career of the 20-year-old Dunedin swimmer. With victory in the 400 metres freestyle final, she's the first New Zealander to win gold at the Aquatic World Champs. However, several top swimmers weren't competing, including Olympic champion Australian Ariane Titmus, American Katie Ledecky and Canadian Summer McIntosh, who have all gone faster than Fairweather. Swimming New Zealand's Olympic program lead, Gary Francis, says Fairweather went into the final as favourite, which was a new experience for her, but she showed she can handle the pressure.
That event at the moment is completely full of the all-time greats in the event, and Erica's right up there. So the 3 big guns weren't there, but Erica's pushing closer and closer, and tonight was another huge breakthrough.
And the men's marathon world record holder, Kenya's Kelvin Kiptum, has died in a road accident in his home country. The 24-year-old broke the record in Chicago last year, becoming the first person to go under 2 hours and 1 minute. That's the news.
Erica Fairweather wins gold at the World Swimming Champs.
She went in as favourite tonight and handled it brilliantly, swam the house down.
a hole in a Tauranga highway.
Raises some eyebrows how that can close down New Zealand's fifth biggest city, but it happened on the wrong road.
And will US politics affect the Super Bowl?
Football has always been an equaliser, and Super Bowl has always been an event for everyone to come together, no matter who you're rooting for.
Covering all bases, Morning Report, weekdays from 6 on RNZ National.
You're on Checkpoint next with Jimmy Ellingham. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Tuesday. For Northland, Auckland and Coromandel, mainly fine. Isolated showers during the afternoons and evenings. For the remainder of the Ika Maui, the North Island, mainly fine. Areas of morning and evening cloud from South Taranaki southwards. Fine weather forecast for Marlborough, Nelson and Buller. Canterbury and Otago except Clutha, fine with high cloud at times. Westland, Fiordland, Southland and Clutha, partly cloudy. A few showers for Fiordland and Rakiura, Stewart Island, and 1 or 2 showers possible elsewhere from the afternoon. Showers becoming confined to Fiordland tomorrow and becoming fine elsewhere. And for Kohu, Chatham Islands, occasional showers, easing tomorrow. The time is 7 minutes past 5. I'll have traffic news and headlines for you at 20 past 5.
Tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki Checkpoint e tēnei rā. Now we begin tonight with thousands of Auckland train commuters are having to find an alternative way home this afternoon with services cancelled because of heat affecting the railway lines. Services on the eastern, western and southern lines have been cancelled since 1 o'clock today and will remain out of action until 8 o'clock tonight. It's reported that the track in Otahuhu reached an astonishing 48 degrees. KiwiRail says that trains have to travel slower over these areas due to the risk the track may have been misaligned due to the rails expanding and the high temperatures. The restrictions come into force once they reach 40 degrees. Our reporter Louise Tenuth has just spoken to commuters at Britomart station.
Oh, right now? Oh, bugger, I am affected then.
Yeah, where are you headed?
To the airport.
If you are affected, how does that leave you?
Well, I could miss a flight at worst, but hopefully I won't. It's not super hot. I guess the tracks are a lot hotter, but it's not so good. I've lived overseas and it's far hotter in Europe in summer, and they didn't have as many problems with the heat.
The thing is, it's always like cancellation, like always. Like, it's never on time. Like, I work, like, it's been 4 years now in Auckland for me, and every time there's cancellations, and even on the weekends, there's no trains. Like, we always have this problem, like, in Auckland.
So heat is the reason for tonight's cancellations. What do you make of that reason?
I don't know, like, they should have planned out everything beforehand. So, yeah.
Is that good enough?
I don't think so it's good enough. Like, Auckland transport should be one of the best because this is like the most densely populated city. So, yeah.
If you can't, do you usually get the train home? How will you get home tonight if you can't?
I'm not quite sure. I have to use Uber or something, which is quite costly.
Just find my way, just call my mum. It's hard to hook me up.
It's been going on for quite a long time, so I'm used to no trains in the evening.
Joining us now is the head of Auckland Transport's public transport team, Stacey van der Putten. Stacey, thanks for joining us, but it's only 24, maybe 23 degrees in Auckland today. Is that really too hot for the trains to run?
I know, it's really frustrating, isn't it? And I feel for all Aucklanders, you're coming back, you're starting the year, you're getting into the stride of things, and then your train services aren't working for you. So, yes, we're very frustrated by it too.
But won't this mean that there's going to be fewer services every day over summer? Because this is a fairly average summer day.
It is a fairly average summer day, I agree. And the thing is, with heat restrictions, that's a standard summer process. You only need to apply those restrictions when you've got known sort of issues in the network. So all things are not, equal in terms of that. So because of that, and because we still have outstanding maintenance and issues that need rectified across the network, that does mean that the train operating speed does need to be lowered. In terms of that, what our operator does is they proactively cancel services. That way they're giving the customer a reliable timetable so they know that their service is cancelled and they can plan for that.
It's not reliable though for the customer, is it, if they can't go to the train station and catch the service as scheduled?
I agree. I agree. But in terms of that, it would be worse if you're going to the station and it looks like your train's coming and it's not. And so it's about giving that, what consistency in terms of if your train is actually going to be departing or not. And they're trying to manage that within the constraints. So in terms of it won't be multiple train cancellations in a row. It'll be, one train's cancelled, your next two will go. So they're trying to manage so that the disruption is spread and it's not what I would call customers are left there for, half an hour or longer during that peak time.
Stacey, I still don't understand why these trains are being cancelled today on the day where it's not that hot.
Yeah, look, this is a standard rail practice that Key Rail does. Once the tracks get over a certain degrees, they do put heat restrictions on. So those restrictions do come on parts of the network where there is awaiting maintenance. Or there has been recent maintenance. So in terms of that, there's obviously been an incredible amount of investment in the rail corridor and an ongoing disruption over the last 4 years. So we expect to have a reliable network and we do not have that, right? And so in terms of, you'll see the Eastern Line is fairly consistent because it's had a lot of work done, but you'll see our Southern Line customers and our Western Line customers have disproportionately impact in terms of, those cancellations across the network.
Do we know how many people are affected by these cancellations today?
It'll be thousands. It'll be thousands of people. And it's really frustrating because what we see sort of coming through our data is that public transport is doing well. People are using public transport and trains is definitely what I would call in terms of recovering to what we call pre-COVID figures is way down because of years of disruption that we've had. And so I think our train customers are over the excuses. They expect that with all the disruption had that they're going to have that reliable service. And we need to do our jobs at AT in terms of advocating for Auckland as, the reliable system that they need. There's a broader issue here, and that's how we get that consistency across the network so that when CRL comes, that we have a reliable network to operate it on.
Yeah, something to look forward to. But today, what are the people to do? And are they still being charged if they're on alternative arrangements?
They will still be able to catch train services. So, during the peak, you do have a 10-minute frequency. And so people won't have to sort of wait long in terms of getting their, available service. The operator cancelling the services in advance does give, customers the ability to sort of plan for that. And with a high frequency during the peak, that sort of does help that there is not what I'd call an extended wait for your next service.
How many services have been cancelled?
Today, I think it was 34 services in total, 34, 35. That's up until 8 p.m.
Yeah, this is the busiest time of year for public transport use. But this will really have a hit on the reputation for people using it and its reliability, won't it?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And, so we're working with Key Rail to understand, how we can get through this and how we can have a reliable network for our customers. It is really frustrating. We're doing everything we can to improve public transport. We got through a massive bus driver shortage and, it is busy out there. The network is getting really busy. So these sort of, inconsistency in terms of that reliability does impact people's confidence to use public transport.
Thank you. That's Stacey van der Putten. Do let us know how your journey has been affected. You can text us on 2101 or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. It's 5:14. Pest controllers have trapped more than 20 rats since Friday at a South Dunedin supermarket, which remains closed for cleaning and monitoring. It comes as a new video shows a mouse scurrying across uncovered salad at Christchurch's Eastgate Countdown. New Zealand food safety staff have been on the ground at both supermarkets and confirmed it has launched an investigation into the latest furry problem. Tess Brunton has more.
Woolworths has been trying to remove rats from its Countdown South Dunedin store since October. It had been confident they were on top of the problem. But last week, 4 more rats were trapped, prompting the store to close over the weekend. New Zealand Food Safety Deputy Director General Vincent Arbuckle says Woolworths spent the weekend throwing everything at the rats, with 8 pest controllers on the ground.
We know that they caught over the weekend 13 rats on site of various ages, and overnight a further 4 were caught. So, their actions are, hunting down the problem.
There is no evidence that the store has been selling contaminated food. Vincent Arbuckle says he's comfortable with the efforts being made by Woolworths to exterminate the problem.
It's just simply not right to have that level of pests evident in the store that's retailing food. So they are of the same mind that they need to get on top of this problem, and they are. And until they get it down to zero, that's the point in which, I think they could then safely reopen.
Woolworths Director of Stores, Jason Stockhill, says 2 pest control contractors have been on site with additional traps and cameras. He says there is no evidence of nesting in the store, and they believe all the ways for the rats to get into the supermarket have now been identified and blocked. In South Dunedin, customers have mixed ideas on whether they'd return to the store.
They've lost my business, at least for a long while. I'm surprised they didn't do anything way back in October when it was first discovered about them not wanting to close it because they'd have to close down the supermarket for a couple of days to do pest control. Kind of shocked a lot of us.
I won't shop there or go there until the mice problem is eradicated.
Not surprised, but wasn't particularly concerned about it though.
Woolworths rodent woes are not over after a new video emerged showing a mouse scurrying across salad in the deli at Christchurch's Eastgate Countdown on Wednesday night. Vincent Arbuckle was alerted to the video last night during a meeting with Woolworths. He says it's completely inappropriate and not consistent with good hygiene and food safety.
There's no place for ready-to-eat foods and vermin like that. We are still getting a report back from Woolworths on what actually happened, but my expectations would be that as soon as sighted, any food in that area should have been removed and destroyed, and then they should proceed to try and track down that mouse.
A senior food safety officer has been on site today to see whether there's any evidence there is a systemic problem. They report it looks like an isolated incident. No other rodents have been spotted at the supermarket, but they're waiting to hear more details from Woolworths. Jason Stockhill confirmed that a dead mouse was found the next day and there have been no other sightings. He says pest control contractors have identified and sealed some entry points into the supermarket, and Woolworths is reviewing its pest management for the store.
And Woolworths says the South Dunedin countdown will remain closed for another 24 hours. Now, the government plans to repeal Labour's 3 water legislation by the end of next week. The repeal will disestablish the planned 10 water entities, instead keeping water assets in council's hands. Cabinet has agreed to set up an advisory group to prepare for the implementation of the coalition government's water plan. The new regime will be established through 2 new pieces of legislation. The first will provide a framework for councils to provide their own water service delivery plans. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon explains the second bill, which will be introduced in December.
This bill will provide for the long-term replacement water services regime. This bill will set out provisions relating to long-term requirements for financial sustainability, provide for complete economic regulation regime, a new range of structural and financing tools, including a new type of financially independent council-controlled organisation. And it will also establish regulatory backstop powers to be used when required to ensure effective delivery of financially sustainable or safe water services, in addition to making necessary amendments to the water regulators legislation to ensure that regulatory framework is fit for purpose and workable for drinking water suppliers.
Local Government Minister Simeon Brown says they want to ensure councils have control.
Rather than a very expensive mega entity bureaucratic approach proposed and actually mandated on local communities, will be allowing communities to put forward their plans and having the tools that they need to be able to deliver that.
That was Local Government Minister Simeon Brown speaking at the Prime Minister's post-Cabinet press conference. It's 5:19, you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Kia ora te iwi. Don't forget you can text us on 2101 and you can tweet us at checkpointrnz or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Anaya iwi mena pito pito kōrero.
Auckland rail services have been cancelled after high temperatures affected the lines, leaving thousands of people looking for an alternative way home. The Eastern, Western and Southern lines will remain out of action until 8 o'clock tonight. Auckland Transport spokesperson Stacey Vanderputten told Checkpoint about 35 services had been cancelled, and she shared travellers' frustration. The government says it'll repeal the 3 waters legislation by the end of next week. The repeal will keep The repeal will keep water assets in councils' hands. Replacement legislation will, by mid-2025, provide a framework for councils to provide their own water service delivery plans. Finance Minister Nicola Willis says the Coalition's first budget will be unveiled on May the 30th. It's expected to lay out a tax relief package. More than 20 rats have been trapped since Friday at the South Dunedin Countdown supermarket. The branch was closed for 48 hours over the weekend to allow pest controllers full access, and store owner Woolworths is extending that closure for another day. Meanwhile, Food Safety is investigating a video of a mouse running across uncovered salad in Christchurch's Eastgate Countdown supermarket. And reports from Papua New Guinea say the opposition claims to have the numbers for a vote of no confidence in the government. There are 118 seats in the parliament, and 1/10 of those are needed to move the motion. Those are the headlines. Looking at traffic, Auckland is experiencing a lot of frustration trying to get home on the trains or anywhere else on the trains, but no word on how that's affecting traffic at the moment. There have been a few crashes in the north and south today, but all have been cleared. Meanwhile, State Highway 29, Hinuera, rehabilitation works on State Highway 29 require daytime road closures through Hinuera Township, between Hinuera Road and State Highway 27, south of Matamata, and that's going to be from the 9th, which is last week, through to the 26th of February. Our next traffic news and headlines are at 20 to 6.
The biggest day in American sport, the Super Bowl, went to an overtime nail-biter that was eventually won by the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs have now won back-to-back titles, making it their third Super Bowl win in 5 years, and we're joined by sports reporter Felicity Reid. Felicity, what were some of the highlights of today's very long game?
So this was only the second time in Super Bowl history that a game has gone to overtime. So there were some new rules for playoff and overtime today that were tested out. It confused, I think, maybe the commentators and some overseas broadcasters. But in the end result was Kansas City beat San Francisco 49ers 25-22. So that in overtime, that was a winning touchdown to Macaulay Hardman. So this was a comeback for the Chiefs. They had been down 10-3 at halftime. So Kansas City fans, they might, their quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, he's been in Super Bowls before. In each of the 4 he's been in previously, he's been down by double digits. So they probably had a bit of faith that he was going to get them through.
Yeah, Kansas were overwhelming favourites though, weren't they?
They'd hoped that it was going to be quite an even matchup between these, and this is probably why it's gone to overtime. You'd be a little bit of surprise that the 49ers were so dominant in that first half. They, for everything that went on there, it wasn't clean football. There were fumbles. There was the longest field goal in Super Bowl history was kicked. That was done by the 49ers kicker, Jake Moody. So he got 55 yards with his field goal. That record didn't last long. 2 quarters later, the Chiefs kicker, Harrison Butker, landed a 57-yard kick. So, plenty of other things happening within the game as well. Another one, Travis Kelce, probably better known to some people as Taylor Swift's boyfriend.
Better known to most people, I think, Felicity.
Got into a bit of argy-bargy with his own coach, Andy Reid. So this was early in the second quarter, a little bit of frustration floating around to how the game was going for the Chiefs. He was yelling in his coach's face. He got up really close. He grabbed his arm, gave him a shove. The coach didn't seem to mind too much.
Is this the norm in American football?
Well, the coach's reaction would suggest that perhaps he's used to that or dealing with athletes in high-pressure situations. Not something that we would normally see or expect from some of our players. The rule is generally hands off the coach, you'd think.
Can you imagine Sam Cane or someone doing that in an All Blacks test? It just wouldn't happen.
No, it wouldn't. One of the many things that are a little bit different about American sport as well. Before we even got to the second half, there was that famed halftime show. Today it was hip-hop icon Usher. He had feathers, he had roller skates, he had 13 minutes to condense a 30-year career. Maybe not the halftime show that we'd talk about in the same way that we would other shows, but this one still decent effort for him, and probably a lot of people would have enjoyed it as well. But getting back to the football, it was less than 2 minutes to go in regular time when the Chiefs were behind by 3. They levelled it up for 19-all, which is what sent it to the overtime, and in overtime, the 49ers scored first, but it was a Mahomes pass to Hardman for the winning touchdown, which sealed it, and there was all the confetti and all the celebrations that you might imagine from an American sport.
Yes, there was, wasn't there?
Even the Gatorade over the coach.
Let's go to swimming now, and Erica Fairweather. She's had some success at the World Champs.
She has. So she was the favourite going into the 400-metre freestyle final in Doha. She led throughout and finished in 3 minutes 59.44, which was a personal best and a New Zealand record. So that was a gold medal for New Zealand at the World Champs, the first time we've got a gold medal at this event. The 400 metre is very hotly contested at this point. It's one of the sort of icon events of women's swimming. Going into this event, she got bronze at the World Championships last year, so winning gold is obviously a step in the right direction for her. You could say that this was a weakened field. They had 3 of the top swimmers in this discipline, so that's Australian Ariana Titmus, American Katie Ledecky, and Canadian Summer McIntosh. Didn't swim at this. They wanted to concentrate on the Olympics, so that maybe gave her a little bit of a window of opportunity.
Is that normal for swimming? Is it that the Olympics are considered above these World Champs and that sometimes swimmers will miss those meetings?
Maybe it's a little bit of keeping in the back pocket about how fast you're actually going. Don't let the rest of the world know how much of an improvement you have made, because Erica is behind those 3 in terms of times, but they are all very close. And it was the Swimming New Zealand Olympic program lead, Gary Francis, says if Erica was in any other era, she'd likely have to have been the number 1 and been considered an all-time great. As it happens, she's just one of the greats in this era. So it really puts into focus what this means for her. But we are still to see more from her at these games. Fairweather is in the 200-metre free, the 800-metre free and the 4x200-metre freestyle relay.
Oh, we look forward to that. Thank you. That's Sport with Felicity Reid. Now it's been described as a major leap backwards in animal welfare in New Zealand. That's the resumption of live animal exports by sea. The SPCA is urging the government to rethink its election promise to reverse the ban introduced by the previous government and bring back the export of live, farmed animals onto ships. Just last month, the ship carrying 16,000 sheep and cattle en route from Australia to Israel was turned back because of the risk of coming under attack in the Red Sea. The animals have been stranded for over a week in intense heat in Western Australia. I spoke with Dr. Anya Dale, Chief Scientific Officer for the SPCA, and began by asking her what a resumption in live exports would do to New Zealand's reputation.
It will be deeply shameful and embarrassing for New Zealand and risk our country's reputation and animal welfare.
We're shipping sheep and cattle by sea. What sort of conditions are they in?
Well, they are in situations where they're exposed to heat stress and injury and disease, overcrowding, motion sickness, changes in feed, poor environmental conditions, as well as poor treatment potentially at their destination, where New Zealand authorities have no control over.
And what toll does this trip take on the animals?
Huge amount of stress, huge amount of welfare compromise, and of course deaths. But before you get to the deaths, you've got the whole lot of suffering that happens before then. Not only that, but also research has shown us that livestock export ships are twice as likely to suffer a total loss compared to standard cargo vessels. And so they're just inherently dangerous. And inherently huge welfare compromise for the animals on board. And there is just no way that we can provide good welfare outcomes for these animals.
So what are we talking about for these animals? How much room do they have? Are they standing in their own waste? What are we talking about exactly?
Absolutely, they're standing in their own waste. The vast majority of the vessels don't have effluent systems. They're in... With the little bit of more space that they got before the ban came into play early last year, they literally can just lie down and stand up, and that is all. And so it is hugely problematic from a welfare perspective. And hugely problematic from a reputations perspective. And so, banning the livestock export by sea was world leading. Reinstating it is not, and it will only result in gold standard embarrassment for New Zealand.
Nonetheless, though, can we afford to ignore a $500 million export industry?
Well, that is a really, really good point. $500 million, which is Not really. Maybe it could even be $261 million, but actually that is just a fraction, as in 0.2% of New Zealand's primary sector exports revenue. So there's very, very little. So we have $54 billion in food and fibre export revenue per year. So that's overall. But if we look at dairy products, just dairy products, it's $26 billion. And live export is just a bit over 2.5 million. So it's only a tiny percentage of the whole export value. And interestingly, the Ministry for Primary Industries advised in their regulatory impact statement that the reputational risks of livestock export by sea are real and likely to result in ongoing negative reputational impacts and cannot be eliminated completely. So we acknowledge that there is a potential loss for a small minority of farmers that are involved with this, that make profit from it.
And
the
National and Act did campaign on this last year during the election campaign. So how likely is it that this new government will listen to opposition?
Well, it will be very interesting to see if they will listen at all. And clearly, Live Export New Zealand think that that they're going to spend $1 million trying to convince us why it is a good idea, when actually livestock export has no social licence at all, and only 19% of people support overturning the ban. So it doesn't have public support. The ongoing risks to the animals are real.
We've received a statement from the Ministry of Primary Industries Director of Animal Health and Welfare, Dr Carolyn Guy. She says the government is considering a restart of livestock exports by sea and has asked MPI for advice about restarting the trade and implementing high standards for animal welfare practices. Overturning the current ban while ensuring the highest standards of animal welfare will require a legislative change. She says the timing of that is yet to be determined. It's 5:32. Kia mau tonu mai, you're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Time for the business news now. Ko tako hoa nai nei, ko Nona Peltier. And Nona, Sky City will find itself in court this week. What's happening?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. So just recently, Sky City talked about agreeing to pay $75 million fine for breaches or alleged breaches of the, now I want to get this right, the anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism laws in Australia. This time around, it's in New Zealand. They're announced they're going to be facing court action in the High Court, civil action, taken by the Department of Internal Affairs. They're expecting for the same kind of thing, but this time the fine is likely to be a total of about $8 million. So they're going to be facing 5 civil actions, and those actions, typically the fines for those would be between $1 and $2 million. So Sky City has tallied them up, thinks it's going to be about $8 million. But that's not going to be the end of their problems, and this has been going on for a while. They are also still being reviewed at the Adelaide Casino by the South Australian state government. There is looking at their licensing, whether or not they're meeting their obligations. Same thing here in New Zealand. The Gambling Commission, a complaint was brought forward by the Department of Internal Affairs involving one person. And that one person was apparently harmed over a period of time between 2017 and 2021. So Sky City, that's about host responsibility. Separate issue. So, yeah, they're still not out of the woods there.
No, have we seen this sort of thing here before, though, or is this new?
Well, it's been going on for a while. This Sky City self-reported initially that they were having trouble with their anti-money laundering issues here in New Zealand. However, they were already in the I guess the sights of the Australian regulator, who has also gone after other casino-type operators in Australia. So this isn't new. It's been going on for a while. Sky City say they have addressed the issues that, they say is mostly historic, but not exclusively, which means there's new stuff there as well. We don't know the details. That's not going to be heard until Friday when Sky City appears in the court by the High Court. And what the details are, we don't know. But we do know that Sky City has said that they've invested in technology upgrades, they've invested in training and policy reviews. This isn't the end of that. We're going to hear a lot more about what's going on with Sky City over time. And they're going to be reporting their financial result, I guess, next week.
And Nona, Fletcher Building is in a trading halt ahead of its first half result to be released on Wednesday morning. So what's the reason for that?
Well, that's another situation where Sky City last week talked about taking a $180 million hit against their revenue as a result of cost overruns at the International Convention Centre, as well as remedial work at the Wellington Airport. Now, maybe people remember that. Well, so they're going to be reporting their financial result for the first half on Wednesday. And today they notified the NZX that they wanted to be put in a trading halt because the guidance of what they're expecting to make in this first half is going to be materially different than what analysts are forecasting they think. And so as a result of that, they've put their company in a trading halt so that the shares won't trade ahead of the speculation that's sure to come. Interesting times for sure. What did that do in the market, you might wonder?
I was going to say, let's take a quick spin around the markets, Nona.
Okay, we will. But I just want to say as well, the market fell 0.9%. That was a drop of 195 points to 11,758. Now, partly that's because, Sky City recovered once they put themselves in a trading halt, so their share price didn't change from the last close. Sky City was down 2%. But interestingly, Synley's come out, that's the dairy specialty milk producer, with another bad update, and their share price fell more than 12%. So, ouch. Now, the markets, the foreign exchange markets are very quiet, and that's because Asia, by and large, is on a holiday. And as a result of that, the New Zealand dollar is steady at 61.3 US cents, just touching 94 cents Australian and 48.5 British pence.
Thank you, Nona. That's Nona with business. Now we go to the Upper Hutt College community, and it's in shock over a violent attack on one of its students, which was filmed and shared across social media. Police in the school are investigating after the video emerged showing 2 junior students attacking a senior as others look on. The Year 9 and 10 assailants are set to find out today if they'll be suspended. Somia Balmadi-Pati reports.
The video shows an Upper Hutt College schoolgirl lying on the ground as 2 younger students pull her hair and release a flurry of kicks and punches to her head and body. At least 5 students can be seen filming on their phones, while a dozen more look on. The brutal attack took place at lunchtime last Thursday. One mum spoken to by RNZ says the violence is confronting.
It was sad, and it made me sick. And I was disgusted by those girls and what they did. And I was disgusted was also disgusted with the girls that were around it, filming it, laughing. It's like, that's not funny.
She says she's satisfied with how the assault's been handled so far and hopes the school continues to take it seriously.
I do hope that those girls get very serious consequences for that, because it's not good. They've done it once and they'll do it again. So, I hope they get serious. Actually, I'd like to see them expelled from the school, really.
The Year 11 victim was left bruised by the attack, and her family contacted the police. Another student's father says he's glad they're involved and says it's a sad situation all round.
Now it's up to police and parents of the girls to then work out what they're going to do. I mean, it's going to be tough for those girls now to get into other schools and things like that. It's like, how to solve the problem? Don't know.
He says the attack has also affected the wider student body. His son wasn't there when it happened, but mentioned it when he got home.
He didn't really want to talk about it, but he said one of his friends was really withdrawn and quite saddened and upset, and just needed some extra comforting and things like that. So it affected, a lot of of the kids who witnessed it.
Principal Judith Taylor declined RNZ's requests for an interview, but said in a statement the attack was unprovoked and happened despite teachers doing lunchtime patrols. Footage of the assault was shared with other young people within an hour, and later by adults on local social media pages, which the principal says re-traumatised the victim. Judith Taylor says the 2 junior students are not currently at school. This parent says it's hard to tell whether a similar attack could happen again.
Is it a one-off? I don't know. That is it. I don't know. But my child will continue to go here because I want to give it a chance, you know. And I think the school has done enough to warrant parents' faith in them.
Judith Taylor says students are scared to speak up about bullying because there's an insidious culture of snitches get stitches in all schools. The college is today starting to implement an online portal so students can report harm anonymously.
It's 5:40, you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Kia ora e te iwi. Don't forget you can text us on 2101 and you can tweet us at checkpointrnz or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Ko iwi anō tēnei.
The SPCA is urging the government to rethink its election promise to bring back the export of live, farmed animals on ships. Dr Anya Dale, Chief Scientific Officer for the SPCA, told Checkpoint it would be embarrassing for New Zealand and risk damaging the country's reputation. The government says it has asked the Ministry of Primary Industries for advice about restarting the trade with high standards for animal welfare practices. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon is this evening meeting the heads of the 48 public agencies ahead of cuts across the public sector in this year's budget. Mr Luxon will be making clear his expectations and says he has also asked ministers to make very clear their priorities to the relevant chief executives. Surf Lifesaving New Zealand says the heat is bringing more people to beaches and more are getting into trouble by swimming outside of patrolling times. A 37-year-old man went missing while swimming at Piha after getting into difficulty just after 5 o'clock yesterday evening. Southland Emergency Management says its building inspectors have confirmed 18 homes in Blue Cliffs are currently safe. A state of emergency was declared last week amid concerns of rapid erosion from the sea and from the Waio River. And in San Francisco, a crowd has attacked a Google-owned self-driving car and set it on fire. This isn't the first attack on a self-driving car, but the severity may illustrate growing public hostility following a pedestrian dragging accident last year. Those are the headlines. Looking at traffic in the Bay of Plenty, there are reports of a crash on State Highway 5, blocking a southbound lane between Kawaha Point Road and Russell Road. Please follow the directions of response crews in the area upon arrival. Consider delaying your journey or expect delays and possible diversions. In Auckland, all the trains are cancelled because of heat on the tracks. Scheduled buses are accepting train tickets. Our next news and weather is at 6 o'clock.
Kia ora iwi. It could take years before many growers on the east coast are back to where they were before Cyclone Gabrielle. Almost a year since the deluge devastated growing areas across Hawke's Bay, Tairāwhiti, Northland, Bay of Plenty, Wairarapa and Northern Manawatu, Horticulture New Zealand is calling for a renewed effort in support. It's asking the government to consider land use changes, overseas investment and incentives to help get them back on their feet. Joining us now is Hawke's Bay apple grower Bryden Nisbet. Kia ora, Bryden. What's this last year been like for you?
Kia ora, Matthew. How are you going? Wow, it's been a huge year. I can't believe it. It's nearly a year as of Wednesday. So a lot's happened, but there's still a lot to go.
Are growers getting back on their feet though?
Yeah, there are a lot of growers getting back on their feet. It's a real mixed bag. I mean, the cyclone hit growers at different capacities, so therefore some people got flooded and had silt deposits a lot worse than other people. So everyone's own experience was different. So everyone's at a kind of different stage of their recovery.
And what exactly is it that you're wanting or needing from the government?
Well, what a great announcement yesterday from the National Party, another 63 million, another $40 million for Hawke's Bay. There are still, hundreds of thousands of tonnes of silt still on really good productive land piled up, and the councils had virtually run out of money, and so all that work had stopped. So the first thing we need to do is get that silt removed, and the regional council can do that now, so that land can then be worked up and put back into horticulture.
Yeah, Brighton, how much of a problem is that silt? I've visited a few orchards in Hawke's Bay, and some of them are really, they're almost buried under it, aren't they?
Yeah, I know. Well, listen, there's some areas that probably will never get removed, like in SVU, where it's just covered the whole orchards, and that might just be the new floor, really. But no, it's an issue. There's just mounds of silt, and it's just really stopping any kind of further renewal of that land. So we need to remove it pretty fast.
Is the government listening to your requests, do you think?
Yeah, I think they are. They've only been in there for a short term. They were part of their 100-day plan. They gave us $10 million just after Christmas, and now they've given us another $63 million. So they are aware of the plight of Hawke's Bay. Luxon's been down here twice now. So they are listening, and they do want to see the whole province get on its feet again and prosper. Where Hawke's Bay is the fruit bowl of New Zealand. It's it's the growing capital, so we need to get this place back and up and running for the sake of the whole country, really.
Yeah, Brian, do we have any idea how much of a hit economically the Hawke's Bay growers have had in that last year? Are those figures available yet?
Not really, not exactly. I wouldn't know those. New Zealand African peers would have those figures, but it's been a huge hit. So 10% of the horticultural land was affected, and we've lost that in apple trees. So that's 600 and something hectares completely gone. So that's income not coming in. A lot of that land will be able to be replanted and worked up over the next few years, but then we run into the issues of ordering trees. And then, you plant an apple tree, you're not going to get a crop back the following year. It's going to take, 5-6 years before you really start getting a good crop. So it's an ongoing saga. It's going to be going well into, 2030 before Hawke's Bay really gets back on its feet in a positive way.
For those growers who have to wait a few years until their crops can return, what do they do in the meantime?
Well, there's a lot of land that has been cleared already. A lot of it's gone into maize or squash. It's been, so there's cropping is on that land. Trees, well, like I said, trees have to be ordered. And because the previous government kind of came in so late with any surety of what they were going to offer, a lot of growers missed the opportunity to order trees for 2024. So they've had to order for 2025, and that's booked up now. There's only so many rootstocks available. So a lot of trees can't even be ordered or received until 26, 27 now. So that just keeps pushing things back. So until then, once the land's cleared, if they haven't got trees, I'll just work that up and put maize in or other crops.
You talk about land use changes too. Can you explain that a bit more about, is that because some land's no longer suitable for growing?
Well, I just think, I think it'd be great to see some new policy settings from this government to really protect highly productive land. It needs to be protected for primary production. Maybe in the future, fewer houses built in the flood zone valleys. I think there just needs to be a real overarching view of the whole catchment area, in Hawke's Bay.
Thank you. That's Hawke's Bay apple grower Bryden Nisbet. It's 5:48. Kia mau tonu mai. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Now, the company behind a Hawke's Bay music festival has collapsed, leaving dozens of musicians and crew thousands of dollars out of pocket. The two-day Nest Fest in Hastings in early January featured big names from the New Zealand music scene, including Ladies Six and Catch a Fire, and other artists from around the country and Australia. Ruth Hill reports.
That's the sweet voice of Lady Six, aka Caroline Tamati, who was one of the headliners at Nest Fest last month, performing to a crowd of about 3,500. Her manager, Ale Tomoana, says performers, the crew, the audience, which included many of her own whānau, had a wonderful time. The first jarring note came after the festival, when she followed up on her invoice and got a call from festival organiser Harry Pettit.
He told me quite directly that they wouldn't be able to pay our settlement invoice immediately, and he would be sourcing investors and partners to cover artist invoices.
Tickets to the two-day festival cost $209, but Peter told her they hadn't made enough money from sales and drinks. Then followed 3 weeks of radio silence until Friday.
He sent an email officially communicating that his business Nest Fest has gone into receivership and then passed over to administrators. He will be leaving the music industry, and he's not too sure what that means for anyone else, but he's really sorry and basically all the best.
For Ale Tomoana, the experience is not only a financial blow, but has been personally distressing. Tomoana Showgrounds is named after her whānau. She says many of the crew of 9 who travelled from Auckland for the festival have families and were relying on that money.
We'll just go through the process and hope for the best, but our priority now is just to take care of our crew and look to work our way out of it.
One young performer, who wishes to remain anonymous, says when their manager wasn't having any luck getting money out of the festival, they decided to make direct contact with Pettit.
I was thinking about messaging him, but when I went about it, he'd deleted all of his social medias, and then all of the Nestfest socials got changed to something really weird.
They were counting on that cash for their imminent move overseas, but instead have ended up hundreds of dollars out of pocket for accommodation and other expenses.
They only agreed to feed us and give us drink tokens and stuff on the day that we were playing because it was a 2-day festival. So for one of the days, I spent maybe $100, $150 on food and drinks, which as an artist at a festival that you're being paid to be at, you shouldn't have to do.
This year was the 6th Nest Festival after the 2023 event had to be cancelled due to Cyclone Gabriel. More than 50 artists performed. Harry Pettit, who previously represented 660 among other Dunedin bands, has not responded to RNZ's requests for comment. RNZ has seen an email sent to creditors in which he apologises for taking so long to get in touch.
The reality is that I've ended up in some hot water over the last couple of weeks, with the cancellation from 2 years ago and now the loss from this year's event, due to legal complications that put me into a frozen state of communication where I wasn't allowed to respond to anyone. Apologies for this, as all I've wanted was to communicate transparently until now. Bird's Nest Entertainment has been forced into receivership, and this process is underway now. Unfortunately, there isn't much money in the business, so this won't be sufficient to cover outstanding costs. It means I'll be having to leave my career in the music industry, which I'm gutted about.
For an industry still recovering from the pandemic years and the fallout from last summer's extreme weather, it's another blow.
Time for some of your feedback now. It's been coming in pretty fast on the Auckland train cancellations. Tony says the train service in Auckland is a joke. Reliability is what public transport is all about. The tracks have recently been upgraded and now it's too hot. My car is always reliable and always leaves on time and generally gets me to my destination as expected. Another texter says, and they wonder why people don't want to use public transport in Auckland. What an absolute joke. George says, how do trains run in hotter climates overseas? Good question, George. We were wondering that, yet Auckland can't even run a train service when it's a bit warm. Unbelievable. Just another example of how terrible our infrastructure is in New Zealand. A city of 1.5 million people and it doesn't have any proper public transport. Keep your texts coming on 2101. Now we go to Christchurch, and a 51-year-old first-timer has made a big splash, earning her a place at the Manu World Champs in Auckland next month. Tanya Veronese Cow flung herself off a 3-metre diving board during the regional heats at Deli Park over the weekend, and she hadn't been on a diving board for 4 decades. Tanya joins us now. Kia ora, Tanya. What made you want to Manu?
Hi. Just for fun. I saw it in the press paper advertised and thought, I'll give that a go. And and the rest kind of quickly flowed after that.
It's been a while. Did you get back into it all right?
Gradually. Yeah, no, my limit had been just normal old 10-year-old stuff at the local pool. But no, I went along to the session on Friday night at Deli Park and got some good tutelage, and yeah, it was a whole lot harder than I thought it would be.
How was it? Do you have any bruises or scars from your efforts?
I do. I've got a massive bruise the size of a dinner plate on the back of one of my legs. It's dark purple. So I'm going to be on the lookout for some very padded pants to wear to the Auckland competition.
Yes. For those of us who haven't done this sort of thing for many decades also, can you just explain what a Manu is? Just how do you do it?
Well, often called popping a Manu. People just jump off wharfs or jetties or off cliffs and things into water, and but it's really popular, particularly amongst guys. They do the cannonball, the coffin, the V-bomb, the staple, or the gorilla, and whatever gets you down and causes a really big splash. And height, you need to have height in the splash, and the volume of the splash, we're judged on that. And,
so that's the goal, is it? Is it the biggest splash or the tallest splash?
Yeah,
how does the judging done?
The height of the splash is crucial, and then the volume of the water as well. And I didn't win it in Christchurch. I was third. There were two other amazing ladies who one got what did she get? 65, and another lady got 60 points, and I came in with the 55 points. So that's how we're all qualified to go up to the nationals, so or to the world champs. Woohoo!
Yeah, and Tanya, can you tell us a bit more about the technique? How do you fall and how do you enter the water?
Well, as a beginner, badly would be my version of it. But the idea is you can't bounce off the board, but you just jump off, and whichever way you go in is okay, but you get the best bang for your buck with trying to do a proper style. But the idea is, well, from what I understand, whether you do it or not is another thing, is when you hit, you sort of lean back a bit. I was attempting to do that, but it was all a bit of a blur at the time, so it was just more of a smash. But yeah, if you lean back, you get the biggest sort of boof, which flies up high. So
yeah, no, well described there. So is that your secret? Is it a bit of a lean?
If I remember to do it in that split second, yeah, it would be a secret. But generally, I'm taking on water and hoping to live. So,
Tanya, how are you feeling about the world champs? Because this will be a bit different going to the ocean, won't it, from a 5-metre board as opposed to the pool in Christchurch?
Well, yes, that's the other thing. Like, I thought it was big doing 3 metres into the Christchurch pool, but it's going to be at the viaduct in Auckland into the sea, yeah, off a 5 metre. So good. I've never jumped that far ever. So,
well, good luck, Tanya. We wish you well for the World Champs. That's Tanya Veronese Cowell, who's going to fling herself into the ocean as part of the World Manu Champs. Now, the Mayor of Porirua says being clean is a human right as a new shower and washing machine service for homeless people in the city opens. Orange Sky Aotearoa is expanding its service into Porirua, citing an overwhelming demand for its services. Pretoria Gordon went to the launch and filed this report.
It's a simple thing, but Porirua Mayor Anita Baker says having access to showers makes a big difference.
Being clean is everybody's right and dignity to be able to wash your clothes and shower.
From today, people sleeping rough in the city will have free access to showers, washing machines and dryers. Anita Baker says there has been an increase in the numbers of homeless in Porirua.
A lot of the time people don't realise the story of what's happening, and there's a lot of mental health issues that need help with as well. So those sort of social services need to increase all around the country.
Sue Hughes from iwi organisation Te Runanga o Toa Rangatira says it's a godsend.
It's something that's really been needed in this area. With the access to these resources, I think a lot of our whānau are going to be helped out.
Orange Sky's senior manager, Kat Doughty, says the company operates 5 mobile laundry and shower vans across the country, from Tamaki Makaurau to Ōtautahi.
It's going to help serve the community who are facing some really tough challenges. So not just our rough sleepers, but our whānau who are really struggling to get clean laundry and safe, warm showers.
The van will be parked up in the centre city every Monday for 2 hours from 10:30. Mana MP Barbara Edmonds says the service does an amazing job.
As the local MP, I've seen them in action in Linden, which is down the south of my electorate, but it's really awesome to see them here in Porirua. They're going to be running here in Porirua Central around the CBD and also in Porirua East shortly.
Barbara Edmonds says there are many reasons why people become homeless, but ultimately the city needs more housing.
Time for some more of your feedback now, and Paul says working on the railways in the 1970s heat was never an issue with Welded Rail ever. New management ignoring old methods, he says. We've heard from Peter, who says this has been happening in Wellington summers since the 1950s. Aucklanders are so frustrated and they don't understand these things. That's from Peter. Keep your feedback coming in on 2101.
RNZ News at 6 o'clock. Tēnā tātou. I'm Evie Ashton. The Prime Minister has called a special meeting of all 48 public service chief executives tonight in order to make clear his expectations. The government is preparing to make cuts across the public sector in this year's budget. Christopher Luxon says he has also asked ministers to make very clear their priorities to the relevant chief executives.
I want them to understand, why we feel this country needs a turnaround, why we are very focused on, making sure outcomes really matter, making sure that all their resources are actually really tied behind the things that are going to make the biggest difference.
Christopher Luxon says he wants public service bosses to be able to ask him questions. Auckland Transport says thousands of people have been affected by the cancellation of 34 train services today. Services on the eastern, western and southern lines have been cancelled since 1 o'clock this afternoon because of the heat and won't resume until 8 tonight. KiwiRail says trains must go slower over hot areas because of the risk from misaligned tracks. AT's Public Transport Director Stacey Vanderputten told Checkpoint Aucklanders deserve better.
I think train customers are over the excuses. They expect that with all the disruption that they're going to have that reliable service. And we need to do our jobs at AT in terms of advocating for Aucklanders, the reliable system that they need.
Stacey Vanderputten says services are being cancelled in advance to give people time to readjust. Surf Lifesaving says the heat is bringing more people to beaches and more are getting into trouble. In West Auckland, a 37-year-old man went missing while swimming at Piha on Auckland's west coast after getting into difficulty just after 5 o'clock yesterday evening. The manager of Surf Lifesaving's northern region, Zach Franich, says more people are swimming in the water outside patrolling times.
Better weather is attracting more people to the beaches, so we are seeing an increase in our head counts, but we're also noticing people are travelling further away to get to the beaches, and once they're at the beaches, they're staying at the beaches for longer. We're seeing increased head counts across the board. As a result of that, we're seeing a dramatic increase in our preventative actions.
Zach Franich says Auckland's west coast is known for historically having dangerous beaches. A Dunedin supermarket won't open for a further 24 hours because of a rat infestation. Rats have been an ongoing problem at the South Dunedin countdown for the past few months. 4 more were trapped last week, 13 over the weekend and 4 last night. The store was closed for pest control over the weekend, then again today, and Countdown's owner, Woolworths, says it'll stay closed another day in case any other rodents are caught. There is no sign of nesting activity in the store. A public health expert says there's no evidence to support the claim that smoke-free laws will boost a black market in tobacco. The government is set to repeal the previous government's legislation banning the sale of tobacco to anyone born from January the 1st, 2009 and reducing the number of retailers. It has argued that the legislation would lead to a rise in crime and a black market. But Chris Bullen from the University of Auckland says the evidence shows that won't happen.
We haven't seen that in New Zealand over more than a decade of increasing the price of tobacco. In fact, all the evidence points to a decline.
Chris Bullen says the government should implement the smoke-free legislation. A 49-year-old man was arrested after armed police were called to a Christchurch shopping centre at about 11:20 this morning. Officers had armed themselves because of reports of a man with a weapon at Eastgate Mall in the suburb of Linwood. The accused man has been charged with possession of an offensive weapon and will appear in the Christchurch District Court later this week. Argentina's new president has given the Pope a hug after a church service in Rome. Javier Milei has previously referred to Pope Francis as an imbecile who promotes communism. The BBC's Paul Moss reports.
It was a suitable occasion to kiss and make up. Javier Milei was in Rome for the canonization of an 18th century Argentinian missionary. We're told he met the Pope briefly before the service and then hugged him afterwards. But despite this personal rapprochement, the two remain split on how to tackle poverty. The newly elected President Milei has slashed public spending, freezing welfare payments. But the Pope's always emphasised protecting the vulnerable and has criticised the inequality which he believes free markets generate. Hugging is unlikely to bridge this ideological divide.
Southland Emergency Management says its building inspectors have confirmed homes in the Blue Cliffs area west of Invercargill are currently safe. A state of emergency was declared on Thursday because of concerns about rapid erosion from the sea and the Waio River during a king tide over the weekend. Group Controller Simon Mapp says an attempt will be made this week to reduce the erosion by opening the river mouth to the sea and directing the flow away from 18 properties. He says work is also underway to urgently remove material from an old fly tip. And Fire and Emergency says it has finished operations in the Lee Valley. A forest fire was sparked after several fires broke out in grass on the side of Lee Valley Road in Tasman mid-afternoon last Wednesday. 2 were contained, but a third spread into maturing pine forest on steep terrain, burning through about 9 hectares. Firefighters were able to contain the fire by Friday evening and spent the weekend extinguishing hotspots. Fens says forestry crews will continue to monitor the site. An investigation into the fire is ongoing, although a suspicious cause has been ruled out. Koinanga Pita Kōrero. That's the news.
Pacific Waves.
Bringing Kiribati back into the forum.
Diving into the big stories of the region.
They are an instrument of the Constitution of Fiji.
And shining a light on issues affecting Pacific peoples in Aotearoa and around the world.
Being able to go out into different places and areas that share special connections with our community was really special.
We tala noa to Pacific leaders, newsmakers, experts and commentators and bring you up-to-date coverage from our dedicated RNZ Pacific team and talented correspondents on the ground in the region. Pacific Waves at 8:15 weeknights on RNZ National.
And we're funded through New Zealand On Air. You're back on Checkpoint next with Jimmy Ellingham. Right now, the updated short forecast from Met Service to midnight Tuesday. For Northland, Auckland and Coromandel, mainly fine weather, isolated showers during the afternoons and evenings. For the remainder of the Ika Maui, the North Island, mainly fine, areas of morning and evening cloud from South Taranaki southwards. Marlborough, Nelson and Bulla, fine. Canterbury and Otago, but not Clutha, fine with high cloud at times. Westland, Fiordland, Southland and Clutha, partly cloudy, a few showers for Fiordland and for Dakiura, Stewart Island, and 1 or 2 showers possible elsewhere. Showers becoming confined to Fiordland tomorrow and becoming fine elsewhere. And for Kohu, Chatham Islands, occasional showers easing tomorrow. The time is coming up to 8 minutes past 6. I'll have news headlines for you at 6:30.
Thank you, Evie. It's been a familiar refrain since at least last year's election. New Zealand's extensive smoke-free legislation will inevitably result in an increase in black market trade. Here's Prime Minister Christopher Luxon speaking on Morning Report back in November.
To say that actually you can concentrate all that distribution in a few shops and you have one smoke shop in one small town in New Zealand, you can't not tell me that will be a massive target for ram raids and crime. There will be an increased black market, an untaxed black market for cigarette smokes.
But in the latest briefing from the Public Health Communications Centre at the University of Auckland, Professor Chris Bullen says this is simply not the case. He says it's yet another so-called zombie argument to try to justify the repeal of New Zealand's smoke-free legislation.
Zombie arguments, it's a kind of fun term, I suppose, that I found was it's a general term that's used to refer to arguments or lines of argument. They're often wheeled out time and again, even though there's no evidence to support them. And so they kind of keep being given new life, like a zombie coming back from the dead, even though there's no evidence or data to support these arguments. And we've found that this seems to be happening with the arguments that are mounted about with the terrible things that would happen if the government kept on with the smoke-free strategies that were proposed under the last government.
So it will cover the Prime Minister's claims that it's a natural reality that decreasing retailer numbers would increase the illicit tobacco trade?
Yes, exactly. So he's said this on a number of occasions, that it's almost sort of common sense, or it stands to reason, or it's a natural reality that this would give rise to that. Whereas in fact, the evidence that we've found is that's not the case at all. So I don't know where he's getting his natural reality from.
So the common sense, there's just no evidence to back that up?
Well, there's obviously news stories, and there's items of news around customs seizures, and there is all the ram raid hoo-ha. That's not completely gone, but the trend is downwards in ram raiding. But the data, if you look at the data on any estimates of trying to quantify, measure the size of the illicit trade over the last 10 years, it's been heading in a downward direction. And the amount of waste that we find on the streets that you can categorise as being illegal tobacco as opposed to the standard tobacco packets you buy in the store, that's been stable, roughly it's under 10%, and that's been the case for a decade or more.
Professor, can you talk a bit more about this black market that we hear so much about? What does it look like and how does it work?
Well, it's a black market, so it's actually quite hard to understand it. It's one of the tricky things about estimating the amounts that are being sold is that because it's an illegal activity, we don't necessarily know how much is getting through. So when you hear that customs have seized so much tobacco at the border, that might give the impression they've got the whole lot. But of course, there's a lot coming through probably in the mail. People are purchasing things online and getting it delivered through the mail. People occasionally try and ship in, container loads of tobacco disguised, stuffed into washing machines or other products. But I think customs is now highly attuned to these kind of tricks. And so when they have a big seizure, that tends to put people off for a while, especially if there are big fines associated with that, which there are now. So I think customs is getting better, so we should expect to see more seizures. We know that the postal importation of tobacco now, that's much, the interception of that is much better than it used to be. And so homegrown tobacco, we know that that's a very small market. There's tobacco. You can go onto Facebook Marketplace and other social media sites and you can see people trying to sell this stuff, but it's pretty small scale at this point in time. But all these things need to be monitored because, there will be blips and, people will try to find their way around as they always do. But overall, all the strands of evidence are pointing in a declining direction, and the more we do to help support people to quit smoking and have fewer smokers, the less demand there will be for illegal tobacco.
If it is hard to quantify the black market, though, could the government be right that there could be an increase in it?
Yeah, well, I think that's why we've looked at it year on year for a decade, despite policies getting tougher, and we've found no evidence that it's been going up. So we would think as these policies continue to get tougher, you would expect to see that downward trend occur. We have done some research with people who smoke and who've engaged with the illegal market. Most people who smoke don't like connecting with gangs or others who are involved in illegal tobacco. They don't like homegrown tobacco particularly compared with the usual cigarettes. We've investigated particular population groups who've been caught out, sometimes smuggling some tobacco in from the Pacific region, and investigated that in quite a bit of detail. And again, most people are saying, well, it's a bit of a losing game to be involved in because it's just not worth it. So all those different strands of evidence suggest to us that it's important to keep enforcement and monitoring at the borders and customs working at the top of the game. That's always going to be important because without enforcement, criminals will think they can get away with it. But it's equally, if not more important, to actually try and prevent the problems emerging in the first place. And again, as I say, the best way to do that is to get smoking down as low as we possibly can.
Now, we contacted the Prime Minister's office this afternoon for a statement, but they did not respond to us. Now, Auckland city centre has outpaced New Zealand's national economic growth for the second year in a row. That's according to just released data for the year ended March 2023, indicating the city centre's GDP grew by 9.2% to $30.4 billion. This compared with 2.8% growth for the whole of New Zealand. Haisa Almeida has the story.
The Infometrics economic profile for Auckland, released this afternoon by the City Council, shows Auckland's CBD's economy has been boosted by population growth. Increased population saw 7.3% annual employment growth in the CBD, compared with national growth of 2.5%, making the CBD the largest employment hub in the country with 157,000 jobs. However, a short walk down Queen Street reveals many vacant shops, nearly 1 year on, with little sign of confidence among people on the street.
I totally avoid it.
It's ugly. It's not attractive.
It's not very welcoming.
No. Why would I? I can get free parking in 277.
I wouldn't say it's noticeable in terms of any improvement. As far as empty shops, yes, I still see heaps. I mean, I was almost seeing the same names of real estate agents on the front windows of shops every day, to the point that I almost knew their names off by heart.
Parking, construction, confusing.
I'll avoid the city at all costs.
Some people say the lack of parking downtown is driving people away.
The foot traffic when I've had to go through has been minimal. Pedestrian crossings with nobody crossing. I understand that they're trying to design it to improve it for the pedestrians and they don't want cars in the city, but without cars you don't have people.
Owner of Marbeck's Records, Roger Marbeck, says retailers are still struggling with a lack of customers.
I think the bottom end retail, the little retailers and that sort of thing, they're still struggling definitely. You'll find empty stores around the place that are still vacant, that have never been filled. It's very hard for small stores.
He says the number of people in the city centre is yet to recover to pre-COVID levels.
The foot flow, we're probably about 3/4 of what we were pre-COVID, I would gauge it at. We're not quite up to where we were before. We've seen a lot of a big increase of the high-end companies coming back to work and bringing their staff back, which is great.
Auckland Council Chief Economist Gary Blick agrees.
Pedestrian count data has made a good recovery, but it's still not quite at pre-pandemic levels. I think it's been some recovery, but it's still not quite back to what it was.
Despite the slow recovery, Heart of the City's Viv Beck says the economic growth demonstrates some resilience.
What it's showing is really the continuation of what we saw through COVID, and that some sectors actually continued to perform well. Others were obviously challenged through COVID, and some of them still are. But I think the pleasing thing is that we can see some really strong results here.
Viv Beck says the completion of projects like Auckland City Rail Link offers hope for continued recovery.
It's 6:17 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. After extra time and in the longest game in Superbowl history, the Taylor Swift-backed Kansas City have won, beating the San Francisco 49ers 25-22. About 65,000 fans packed into the Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, with an estimated TV audience of about 200 million people. World Watch's Andrew McRae reports.
It all comes down to this. An entire season has been played for the right to lift the Vince Lombardi Trophy. Super Bowl 58 starts now.
The San Francisco 49ers last won the Super Bowl in 1995. Kansas City were defending champions, looking for their fourth Super Bowl win. At half-time it was 10-3, and that's when the real show began.
Don't leave your girl around me, but you play for real. Let's go! Ow!
Singer Usher took to the field. He'd promised a celebration for his Super Bowl halftime show, and he didn't fumble. The Grammy-winning artist kicked off a 13-minute mashup of his hits, accompanied by dozens of dancers, showgirls and acrobats. A set that's been dubbed Cirque du Usher. And just in case they didn't know Usher, earlier these sixth graders were given a quick lesson by their teacher.
How we spell his name the correct way. He'll say, they call me U-S-H-E-R-R-A-Y-M. O-N-D. Okay, all right, that was really good.
Back to the sport, and at the end of regulation time it was 19-all, so the game went to overtime.
San Francisco takes the knee, and we are going to overtime in Las Vegas.
In extra time and minutes to go, the 49ers led 22-19, but the Chiefs weren't done yet.
On the move, touchdown! McCall Hardman! The Chiefs are Super Bowl champions again!
CNN's Andy Scholes says the second Super Bowl final ever to go into overtime started slowly and was seen by some as boring, but that quickly changed.
It was one of the most fantastic finishes we've ever seen in Super Bowl history.
After 49ers rookie kicker Jake Moody had booted a field goal, Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes marched down the field and finished the game with a 3-yard touchdown pass to McCall Hardman. Here's Mahomes after the game.
It's the start of one. We're not done. I know we're going to celebrate tonight, celebrate the Parade Wednesday, Kansas City, but we're not done. We've got a young team. We'll keep this thing going.
An estimated 67 million people placed a bet on the game, spending $23 billion. Some will obviously be happy, others not so much. Singing star Taylor Swift, whose boyfriend Travis Kelce played for Kansas City, made a dash to Las Vegas from Tokyo, making it just in time, and very pleased she did. She now gets back on her plane and heads down under to continue her world tour in Melbourne.
In Gaza, more than 1 million Palestinians are waiting for the Israeli military to attack the southern border city of Rafah. The US president has warned Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that Israel should not go ahead with the military operation without a credible plan to protect civilians. Mr Netanyahu says his government is working on one. The ABC's Nicole Johnston reports.
Crammed into the southern border town of Rafah, hundreds of thousands of Gazans are facing a looming Israeli offensive, one that will see tanks and soldiers on the street. Israel says its army will enter Rafah any day now. It says senior Hamas military units are based in the city. It leaves Gazans with an impossible choice. Do they stay or do they try and flee before the battle begins? Gaza journalist Sami Ziara says he's planning to get out of Rafah.
So I'll be waiting for a couple of days till they finish, and then I will evacuate. Up till now, I have no idea. Tomorrow I will go there. I will try to find an apartment or any place to put my kids and my father and mother on it. But it's really catastrophe. And we exhausted. We became really tired. I'm evacuated for 16 times, and right now I will do the 17.
The US is worried about what is coming. The White House says US President Joe Biden has told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that Israel shouldn't go ahead with its invasion of Rafah without a credible plan to protect civilians. Last week, Biden called Israel's response in Gaza over the top. There are also reports that Egypt is threatening to suspend its peace treaty with Israel if it sends troops into Rafah. Cairo is worried a battle in Rafah would push Palestinians into the Sinai Peninsula, creating another refugee disaster. But Benjamin Netanyahu says the Israeli government is working on a plan to move Gazans out of Rafah. He's speaking here with American news network ABC.
Well, Rafah is a very small percentage of Gaza, and I think it's about 10% or 15%.
I mean, the estimates
are there area north of Gaza that has already been cleared.
Well, there's an estimated 1.4 million people in that area right now, and as the German foreign minister said, they can't just disappear. Where are they supposed to go?
No, well, the areas that we've cleared north of Rafah are plenty of areas there, but we are working out a detailed plan to do so.
While Israel plans, Gazans wait in limbo. More than 4 months of war, no ceasefire in sight. Gaza journalist Shadi Abu Ahmed.
We don't have really real plans under the fire. All the things that we do is how to keep our heads down, especially with our kids, and try to find like a safer or less dangerous places according to the Israeli plans.
1 in 3 Australian students can't read properly, and that's costing the economy about $40 billion. That's the result outlined in a new report from think tank the Grattan Institute. The students who fall behind generally don't catch up, and it's being described as a preventable tragedy. The report says teaching methods are to blame, that the evidence is clear on what works, and it's time for a reading revolution in classrooms. The ABC's Connor Duffy has more.
I'm going to ask that again. Some people are asleep. What two letters are making our all as in saw sound? Good job.
At Churchill Primary School, 2 hours outside of Melbourne in the Latrobe Valley, Hayley McCall is teaching her Year 2 class one of the most important lessons they'll get, how to read.
All as in saw at the end of the word. Good job.
They'll learn, simple one-syllable words with that sound today, and then the next day they'll be reading it in sentences. The next day they'll be reading it in bigger multi-syllable words as well.
It's a teaching style called structured literacy that's anchored in phonics and involves breaking all of the key components of reading into lessons that are taught explicitly to students. Churchill Primary has had remarkable success since it adopted this method. In 2016, almost half of Year 3 students and 65% of Year 5 students did not meet national minimum standards in reading. Principal Jackie Burrows says within 3 years, every single student met or exceeded the standard.
For us, the most exciting thing about this new approach is the results that we've got for the kids. So the kids are performing much higher academically, but also their engagement, their attitude towards school. Teachers are enjoying teaching a lot more because the kids are being successful.
The new approach replaced a teaching style called whole language, popular on university campuses. Its philosophy is that reading is natural, and it aims to teach partly by empowering students through exposing them to good literature and having them discover reading on their own. Principal Jackie Burrows says this approach was leaving students guessing words, which was frustrating for them and their teachers.
They're not left to discover things for themselves or flounder. They're actually taught explicitly everything that they need to know before they're asked to apply it to anything.
And today, a major report released by the Grattan Institute features Churchill Primary and calls for all of Australia's 10,000 schools to go on a similar journey. The lead author is Dr. Jordana Hunter, who says the science is settled and structured literacy is the superior model.
We need to stop accepting failure. It's not good enough that 1 in 3 students are not where they need to be in reading. This is a national tragedy, and as I said, it's a preventable tragedy.
The Grattan Institute says this has a profound personal cost, with students unable to read more likely to drop out of school, be unemployed, or even go to jail. It predicts it will also have a society-wide cost of $40 billion over these students' lifetimes. But not everyone agrees. The Australian Literary Educators Association says whole language can be useful for some students and that it's opposed to one-size-fits-all teaching methods.
Finally tonight, Canadian rapper and hip-hop artist Drake might have placed a cool $1.8 million bet on the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, but it's his generosity towards a fan that is the talk of the town in Nashville. A cancer survivor who went to his concert to celebrate finishing chemotherapy was shocked when he singled her out in the crowd. Tracy Cornett reports.
Forget Drake. Forget anybody else in this building right now.
He's talking to me? I was just honestly completely shocked that it was me out of the entire arena that he was talking to.
That was Lauren's reaction when she noticed Drake stopped his show at Bridgestone Arena to recognize her fight with cancer. He shocked the crowd when he offered her a special gift.
We're going to give you $100,000 from me.
I was like, what is going on right now? What is this world?
Lauren was diagnosed with cancer last year, and after 6 rounds of treatment, she decided to get out and see Drake perform. She held a sign proudly over her head, saying she just finished chemo.
That's a true soldier right there.
The fact that I got recognized for all the trials that I've gone through is just insane.
Drake's gift enables Lauren to have complete coverage of medical bills, as well as the ability to pursue what she loves most.
Music is my favorite, so like not being able to afford going to concerts was like something, and just like being able to put money aside for my daughter.
Lauren plans to continue to fight so she can show up for her family, including her 2-year-old daughter.
Just missing out on life like with my daughter and just being able to fully be present with her has been really, really hard.
And now she has a message for Drake.
Your music is what honestly has gotten me through a lot, and I appreciate you more than words.
To your feedback now, we've had plenty coming in tonight. Rob from Greymouth, when talking about the rats at Countdown Dunedin, he asks, what's the plural for rats? Is it a pack, a herd, a flock, a murder, a swarm or a plague? Well, Rob, we've had our team of researchers on it for you, and we can tell you that the collective nouns are mischief, swarm or horde, so you can take your pick of which one of those that you want to use. Auckland trains, we've had lots of texts in about that. One person says, I'm hearing a lot of complaints about the unreliability of the trains in Auckland today, but if a train derailed because of heat misalignment, there'd be a huge outcry, and rightly so. Another person says, all these people complaining about our rail have obviously never lived in the UK with its wrong type of snow or leaves on the line. Stop complaining and pay more rates and tax if you want a better system. That's it from us. The Late News team will keep you updated throughout the night, and from 5 a.m. tomorrow you can listen to First Up. They head to Kadi Kadi Beach on Auckland's west coast, 1 year on from the devastating Cyclone Gabrielle. They'll also hear from Finance Minister Nicola Willis on all the latest in politics.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Tēnā tātou, I'm Evie Ashton. The Prime Minister is tonight meeting all 48 public service chief executives as the government prepares to make cuts across the public sector in this year's budget. Thousands of Auckland rail passengers have been affected by today's cancellation of 34 services, a move blamed on the hot weather. Eastern, Western and Southern Line trains will resume at 8 p.m. The South Dunedin Countdown supermarket will stay closed for a further 24 hours to deal with its rat problem. 21 rats have been caught since Friday, and the Israeli military says it's rescued 2 hostages during a raid in the Gaza Strip. Those are the headlines. Our next news and weather is at 7.
This morning on First Up, we talked with Tauranga man Mahir Azam, who is raising funds to get his parents out of Gaza.
The situation in Gaza can be described in one sentence. It's whether to flee and die 1,000 times or stay and die once.
And it's the year of the dragon. Here comes the year of the dragon baby boom.
Dragon actually in Chinese traditional culture, it is a symbol of strength, courage and auspiciousness. And that's just why some Chinese people want to have a dragon baby. So last time we have the year of dragon and there was a boom.
All right. Download First Up, the podcast, to join me, Nathan Rarere, weekday mornings live from 5 on RNZ National.
And we're funded through New Zealand On Air. Hi, I'm Evie Ashton. You're with me through to 7 o'clock tonight. And we begin with the detail. Right off the back of much Swiftie talk this evening following that victory by the Kansas City Chiefs at the Superbowl, and therefore Taylor Swift's boyfriend, Travis Kelce, has won. We go to 2 AUT academics who are taking their Taylor Swift obsession to the next extreme at a Swift Posium in Melbourne, ahead of the Star's Australian tour.
They say she can sway an election.
With truly the touch of a button, Taylor Swift is uniquely situated to use the data at her disposal to impact the presidential race.
Save a country from recession with her Swiftonomics.
The pop star will contribute almost $140 million to the local economy.
She just keeps breaking records.
Her tour is estimated to have generated $5 billion in consumer spending in the U.S. alone. She was Spotify's top streamed artist of the year with 26.1 billion global streams.
Universities all over the world teach classes about her. And right now, ahead of the Star's Australian tour beginning on Friday, academics are meeting for this.
Swifties in Australia have a reason to be excited.
Next February, the impact of Taylor Swift will be pored over by academics at a major but still highly unusual Swift Posium.
Discussing all things Tay-Tay. The so-called Swift Posium runs from this Sunday to Tuesday at the University of Melbourne.
The conference coincides with her sold-out Eras tour. Scholars attending the event are asked to submit papers on Swift's impact on the music industry, social movements, the economy and more.
I'm Sharon Brett Kelly today.